VSOP Hip Hop and Wrestling, how you doing?
What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about the 2023 WWE Draft. Who went to SmackDown? Who went to Raw? In this video, we'll recap and review every pick that happened on the show, and we'll recap the picks that happened after the show. Round one, the number one pick was Roman Reigns, but also it included Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa. So we have three members of the Bloodline in one draft pick. The number one pick for Monday Night Raw was the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes. That really was not much of a surprise. I think it's probably best to keep him on a different brand from the Tribal Chief. Also, I want to point out that since Roman Reigns is staying on SmackDown and he is the current undisputed Universal Heavyweight Champion, that means that brand new World Championship title is going to belong to Raw. The new champion will be crowned at the Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia. So having said that, it's going to be interesting to see who's in this new title mix. We'll have a better idea of who that is when the rosters are complete. Speaking of world champions, the Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair got drafted over to SmackDown. Rhea Ripley will remain on Raw, and at some point they will swap the titles and Rhea will be the Raw Women's Champion and Bianca will be the SmackDown Women's Champion. The man, Becky Lynch, was drafted back to Raw, so she will remain there. That was round one. Now in round two, SmackDown selected the Street Profits, Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins, together as a team. So this is pretty cool. We get to see some new tag team feuds, some new matchups. I'm always excited about seeing new matchups. And keep your eyes on Montez Ford. At some point, sometime, they got to break this guy out and give him that singles run. Monday Night Raw has drafted the Intercontinental Champion Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser, and Giovanni Vinci. The whole Imperium crew all in one pick. So as I mentioned earlier, they're not separating any of these teams. It doesn't seem like they're separating factions either. So I'm actually happy to see Gunther on Monday Night Raw along with Imperium. I can see some great six-man matches, some great tag matches, and of course, action-packed, hard-hitting Intercontinental Championship title defenses. So I'm looking forward to that. Good pick by moving Gunther and Imperium over to Raw. Next up, SmackDown drafted the Rated R superstar Edge, who built a majority of his career on SmackDown. So it's cool to see him come back. I'll be interested to see who he feuds with first. He, similar to Rey Mysterio, has been dealing with Judgment Day for about 9 to 10 months now. Are we going to see something fresh and new? I guess we'll find out. The next pick for Monday Night Raw was Matt Riddle, so he will remain. No sign of Randy Orton yet, but if Randy Orton is coming back, I would love to see RK Bro continue. Round three. Now this was a big one. SmackDown picked up the almighty Bobby Lashley, who has been tearing through Raw for the past year, while Raw picked Drew McIntyre. This is a pretty big swap of talent. The question is, how long will Bobby Lashley tear through the SmackDown talent before he has to inevitably face the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns? And Drew McIntyre, I assume he's going to be thrown in that new World Heavyweight Championship mix immediately. So that's going to be something good to see right there. SmackDown picked up the OC, the entire faction, including AJ Styles, Michin, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson, which is pretty cool. They came out as a collective and they beat up on the Viking Raiders. So let's see where that goes. I think that was a good pick. AJ Styles has spent plenty of time on SmackDown, so it's good to see him back. Also, possibly another championship contender for the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. Raw picked up The Miz. Technically, Miz is staying on Raw, which is fine. Round four, SmackDown picked up Bayley, Dakota Kai, and Io Sky, the entire Damage Control faction, which means they won't be feuding with Becky Lynch anymore, but Bianca Belair better watch out. Raw picked up Shinsuke Nakamura. Now that was a pretty fun pick. Just for the sake of new matchups, I would love to see him versus Gunther, versus Cody Rhodes, of course, versus Drew McIntyre. Let's see how this works out. Throw this man in the World Heavyweight Championship mix. Get him in the ring with Austin Theory. Oh, that would be great, right? SmackDown. Now, this was surprising. They picked up the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. Interesting to see them pick up those two. That tag team together, that combination. They are really, really good. Monday Night Raw picked up the NXT Women's Champion, Indy Hartwell. Now that surprised me a lot. She has built herself up pretty well. She has the look and the charisma, and she's tied to Dexter Lumis. So let's see what they do with that. If Johnny Gargano, Candice LeRae, and Dexter are all on the same show, along with Indy, maybe they can reestablish their family dynamic that they had in NXT. Now, those were all the draft picks that happened on the SmackDown episode, but after SmackDown went off the air, there were some additional picks. Raw picked up the Viking Raiders. So we got Eric, Ivar, and Valhalla all as a group. Raw drafted Dexter Lumis, Candice LeRae, the Maximum Male Models with Massey and Mansoor and Maxine Dupree, Zoe Stark, JD McDonough, and Apollo Crews, all coming from NXT. Also, they picked up Natalya, Sonya Deville, and Chelsea Green. All these picks went to Monday Night Raw, where SmackDown, they got Hit Row with Top Dollar, Ashanti the Adonis, and B-Fab, and Lacey Evans. That's it. And then here's a little interesting piece. We have free agents of Omos, Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler, and NXT's Von Wagner. So we have all of our picks from night one. Let's go ahead and fast forward to night two of the WWE Draft. First pick was the SmackDown Women's Champion, and I guess will eventually be the Raw Women's Champion, Rhea Ripley. With Bianca Belair moving over to SmackDown, this gives Rhea Ripley the opportunity to dominate the entire Raw Women's division. But first, she has to get through her opponent this weekend at Backlash in Zelina Vega. The next draft pick was Austin Theory, our current United States champion. So now he's part of the Blue brand, headed over to SmackDown. You know what that means. New rivalries, new matchups. Made perfect sense to me since they moved Gunther and Imperium over to Raw. So we've officially switched the secondary titles. Eventually, they're going to switch the women's championships. And who knows what they're going to do with the tag team division. More on that later. With the third pick in the first round, Monday Night Raw selects Seth freaking Rollins to continue his offbeat shenanigans and eventually make his way towards that new World Heavyweight Championship title. Next up to be drafted by SmackDown was Charlotte Flair, so she'll be staying put on the Blue brand, and I'm perfectly fine with that because I'm looking forward to seeing her feud with Bianca Belair, two of the best athletes in all of WWE. So that was round one. In round two, Raw selected the undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. So with Raw being their official home now, what does that mean for the Tag Team Championship titles? The two of them have been going back and forth between the two brands as single stars for the past 6 or 7 months, but now Raw is where they're going to stay, so I guess that means we need to have a second WWE Tag Team Championship. I would prefer not to, but they're splitting the other titles, so I guess we'll see what happens, but good to have them on the flagship brand. Which leads me to the next pick. SmackDown selects the Usos, which is interesting because the Bloodline feud is starting to become more internal than external. Now that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are drafted to Raw and the entire Bloodline is drafted to SmackDown, does that mean that this feud is going to take a temporary pause, or will the plot continue to thicken? Interesting times ahead indeed. All right, so the next pick on Raw was the entire Judgment Day. Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and ex-Con Dom, Dominic Mysterio, all together as a faction. We've seen the reoccurring theme throughout this draft. They are not breaking up any teams. They're not breaking up any factions, and I'm perfectly cool with that. So similar to the first two second-round picks, SmackDown selected Rey Mysterio and the LWO, Santos Escobar, Cruz del Toro, I can't say his name, Joaquin Wilde, and Zelina Vega. So, Edge, Rey Mysterio, they are on a completely different show from Dominic and the rest of Judgment Day, so it's safe to assume that after Backlash, this feud should be over, or temporarily put in the freezer. And when the time comes, they can take it out the freezer to thaw and reestablish the whole feud. just in time for SummerSlam. Besides, there's plenty of holidays coming up for Dominic to ruin for Rey Mysterio. We got July 4th, we got Labor Day. So round 2 was one of the most interesting rounds based off of the fact that we had established feuds separated by the 2 shows. Let's see if they stick to that. All right, so now we're at round 3 where Raw selected the Women's Tag Team Champions, Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. So they will be staying put on Monday Night Raw, but who will not be staying put on Monday Night Raw is the Empress, Asuka, as she was selected as the second pick in round 3. But the Empress is headed to the Blue brand, so she'll be bumping heads with Bianca Belair and Charlotte. So that division is looking pretty strong on SmackDown. For the next pick, Raw selected The New Day, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston. I'm not sure what that means for Big E when he gets back, but we miss you, Big E. Looking forward to seeing Big E back in the ring someday, but in the meantime, we can get excited about Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods taking on Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens for the WWE Tag Team Championships and possibly reestablishing a feud with the Imperium. And then for the last pick in round 3, SmackDown selected Sheamus, Butch, and Ridge Holland, the Brawling Brutes, I meant to say. And while the Brawling Brutes have already taken on the Street Profits, it's a matchup that I don't mind seeing again. The SmackDown Tag Team division is heating up in many ways. More on that later. So that was round 3. Off to round 4, where Raw selected Trish Stratus. Is she here to stay? All right, I'm cool with that. Trish Stratus and Becky Lynch got some unfinished business to take care of. SmackDown selected Karrion Kross and Scarlett, so Karrion Kross will remain on SmackDown. Can't deny that the Karrion Kross and Scarlett ring entrance is one of the coolest entrances going on today. So that was a good pick. He can stay and continue to grow on SmackDown. Next up, Monday Night Raw selects Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. So now they are back on the flagship show, and since they got drafted together, I'm assuming they're going to remain a tag team, which is trouble for Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. So let's see where that goes. So the last pick in round 4 for SmackDown was LA Knight.
Yeah!
LA Knight.
Yeah!
LA Knight.
Yeah!
If they ever want to turn LA Knight babyface, I know exactly who they should pair him up with. Since Raw is a 3-hour show, they get 2 additional rounds. So for round 5, Raw selected Braun Strowman and Ricochet together as a team. So similar to Ronda and Shayna, they can bring them in and immediately throw them into the tag team title mix. Or when they get tired of that, break them up into singles competitors. SmackDown selects Shotzi as their next pick. I'm cool with that. Not to steal her thunder, but I want to talk about who is remaining on Raw, and hopefully he will have a breakout year, season, whatever you want to call it. Bronson Reed bringing that tsunami. Let me throw some splashes on here real quick. Y'all going to stop sleeping on Bronson Reed. This guy is the truth, because when he gets in the ring, you know what you're about to see. Tell him, Big E.
Big meaty man slapping meat.
And the final pick in round 5, SmackDown selects Elton Prince and Kit Wilson, otherwise known as the amazing team from NXT called Pretty Deadly. And this act is entertaining as hell. So I'm happy to see them on the main roster in the tag team title mix. Pretty Deadly is a big deal, and you will not be disappointed once they make their way up to SmackDown, if they're allowed to do their NXT gimmick. The only way this can fail, if this guy decides to change their character. Very excited to see all this great NXT talent get a chance to shine on the main roster. Let's go to round number 6. Monday Night Raw selects Otis and Chad Gable, the Alpha Academy, so they will be staying put on Raw. So now the Raw Tag Team Championship picture is looking pretty strong. Not as strong as SmackDown, but still strong. SmackDown selected Rick Boogs. Interesting pick. Hopefully he'll get a chance to shine and break through. The SmackDown roster is pretty loaded. Another interesting pick to shake up the Raw Women's Tag Team division. Raw selects Katana Chance and Kaden Carter from NXT, and this tag team is really, really good and really entertaining. Go back and watch some older NXT and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, especially when they were the tag team champions. And last but not least, the last official pick on the show, SmackDown has selected Cameron Grimes from NXT, North Carolina native. And my first thought was, well, it's about damn time. So I'm pretty excited about this pick to see how his character translates from NXT to SmackDown. So those were all the picks that were made on the episode of Raw, but there were still a lot of draft picks made once the show went off the air. Let's check them out. So Raw picked up Akira Tozawa, Garza and Umberto, Dana Brooke, Emma, Indushir, Johnny Gargano. Damn, Johnny Gargano's in the post-show draft. Nikki Cross, Odyssey Jones from NXT, Piper Niven, Riddick Moss, Tegan Knox, and Xia Li. A lot of picks for Raw, not so many for SmackDown, as they picked up Grayson Waller from NXT. If you have not seen Grayson Waller, this man's character is full of charisma. He's great in the ring. He is the perfect heel. So I'm really curious to see what they do with him and if they allow him to bring his NXT gimmick up to SmackDown. If so, it's going to be great. Don't change the channel when this man's on the television. And then SmackDown's final pick is Tamina. So we got some more free agents as well. The most notable free agent is the Beast Brock Lesnar, so he's allowed to wreak havoc on multiple shows. And we also got the team of Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander, Elias, and Zion Quinn. All free agents able to move around as they wish. So as much as I talked shit about the idea of a draft on one of my previous videos, I found that this draft holistically was very good, very interesting, and they shook things up. So that's my recap of the 2023 WWE Draft. But I want to know what you think. What do you think about this year's draft picks? Are you looking forward to next year's draft? I hope you have a wonderful day, and make sure that you watch NXT so you can get a glimpse into the future, because a lot of those stars are going to get drafted in next year's draft. All right, VSOP out.